At family dinner, my brother said, "You are a burden, we want to live without you." The next day. I'm Jarvis Coleman, 35 years old, and I never thought my own brother would destroy me at our parents' dining table in front of everyone who mattered. It was Dad's retirement celebration. After 30 years teaching at Roosevelt Elementary in Phoenix, Arizona. The whole house buzzed with laughter. Neighbors from our Scottsdale suburb, family friends, the clink of beer bottles and wine glasses echoing through our childhood home. I'd spent the entire afternoon perfecting Mom's famous peach cobbler recipe, the one I'd learned during my bakery days before everything changed. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and butter, and I was so proud, carrying that golden brown masterpiece to the dining room where Dad sat at the head of the table. His weathered teacher's hands wrapped around a cold Budweiser. That's when everything shattered. My brother Derek, 3 years younger but somehow always the golden child, leaned back in his chair, his voice cutting through the celebration like a blade. "Jarvis, you're dragging us all down," he said. His eyes cold as winter, not even glancing at the cobbler I'd just set down. "We'd be better off if you just weren't here anymore." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Dad, sitting right there with his retirement cake half eaten, just nodded slowly, like Derek had commented on the weather. "Maybe it's time," Dad said quietly, his teacher's voice steady and final. Mom froze, her fork hovering over her slice of cobbler, but she said absolutely nothing. The neighbors, Martha from next door, the Johnsons from across the street with their matching golf shirts, went dead silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. I felt my face burn with embarrassment, but I didn't break. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. I picked up my Corona, took a long, slow sip, letting the bitter taste match the sting in my chest. Nobody spoke up. Not one person defended me. The air felt thick, suffocating, like Phoenix in August without the AC running. I set down my beer, stood up, and walked calmly to my childhood bedroom. Every step measured, deliberate. They didn't deserve my tears. I packed one suitcase, clothes, my laptop, a few photos from my bakery days. The house had gone quiet, like they were all holding their breath. I slipped out the back door into the desert night, my phone already buzzing with notifications I refused to check. I drove my Honda Civic 10 miles to a Motel 6 on Camelback Road, the neon sign flickering against the dark sky. As I sat on that scratchy bedspread, staring at the popcorn ceiling, one thought kept circling through my mind. They wanted to live without me? Fine. But when the lights go out, when the bills start piling up like Arizona dust storms, when their comfortable little world starts cracking at the edges, will they still find it so easy? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment and let me know which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches, and who out there quietly understands what it feels like to be invisible in your own family. I woke up in that motel room to the sound of Phoenix traffic and my phone buzzing like an angry wasp. Derek's name flashed across the screen, followed by Mom's number, but I let them ring. Instead, I stared at the water-stained ceiling and let my mind drift back to how I'd ended up here. Not just in this cheap room with paper-thin walls, but in a life where my own family saw me as dead weight. 3 years ago, I owned Sweet Dreams Bakery on Central Avenue, right in the heart of Phoenix. It wasn't much to look at, just a small storefront with mismatched tables and chairs I'd found at garage sales, but it was mine. Brides would come in clutching Pinterest photos, begging me to recreate their dream wedding cakes. I'd work until 2 a.m., my hands covered in flour and food coloring, but I loved every exhausting minute. The bakery was my pride and joy, built from nothing after years of working double shifts as a waitress at Denny's, saving every tip. Then Dad called one night, his voice heavy with defeat. The house, our family home in Scottsdale where I'd learned to ride bikes and had first kisses, was drowning in debt. Medical bills from Mom's cancer treatment had piled up like monsoon floods. The mortgage was 3 months behind. I didn't even hesitate. I sold Sweet Dreams for $180,000. Enough to clear their debts, fix the leaking roof that had been dripping into buckets for months, and keep them afloat. I moved back into my teenage bedroom, thinking it was temporary, just until they got back on their feet. But temporary stretched into 3 years. I covered everything. Electricity that ran $400 in summer heat, water, internet, car payments, even the homeowner's insurance. Nearly $2,500 a month flowing straight from my checking account. I took a job at Home Depot in the garden center, arranging their seasonal displays for half what I used to make, just to keep money coming in. Dad would grunt his thanks while tinkering with broken lawn mowers in the garage. Mom would hug me and say, "Thank you, sweetheart." But Derek? Derek acted like I was squatting in their house. The brother who used to sneak into my room during thunderstorms, begging me to tell him stories until the scary sounds stopped, was gone. Derek had changed after I moved back in. Growing up, he'd been my shadow, following me around the neighborhood on his little BMX bike, begging to help with my school projects. "You're so cool, Jarvis," he'd say, his gap-toothed grin wide as the desert sky. We'd sneak out to the backyard pool at night, floating on our backs under the stars, whispering about our dreams. But that Derek vanished. This new version rolled his eyes when I walked into the kitchen, muttered complaints about me taking up space. Once he snapped at me for leaving a coffee mug in the sink, saying, "You don't even belong here anymore." I brushed it off, thinking he was stressed about his struggling music career, always chasing gigs that never materialized. Lying in that motel bed, I realized how blind I'd been. I'd sacrificed my dreams to save theirs, and they'd grown to resent me for it. I checked out of the Motel 6 by noon, my Honda's AC struggling against the Phoenix heat as I drove across town to my lifeline, Cameron and Brooklyn's place in Tempe. They'd been my anchor since I sold the bakery, always ready with iced tea and honest advice. Their Adobe-style house near ASU felt like an oasis, somewhere I could finally think clearly without the weight of family expectations crushing down. Cameron opened the door before I could knock. His face creased with concern. "Jarvis, what happened?" he asked, pulling me inside where Brooklyn was already setting out sandwiches and sweet tea. Her eyes soft but searching. I sank into their living room couch, the events of the last 24 hours feeling surreal in the morning light. I told them everything, not just about the cobbler or the celebration, but about Derek's cold words, how he'd called me a burden. How Dad nodded in agreement like he'd been waiting years to agree. How Mom sat there silent as a desert morning. "He said they'd be better off without me," I told Cameron, my voice steady though my chest ached. And nobody, not one person, told him he was wrong. Brooklyn reached across their coffee table and squeezed my hand. Cameron leaned back, his jaw tight, like he was connecting dots he'd seen before. "You know," he said after a moment, "this reminds me of my cousin Danny up in Flagstaff." Danny had been supporting his adult son and daughter-in-law, paying their rent, utilities, even their grocery bills. The son had called Danny overbearing and controlling, said he was tired of his dad's involvement in their lives. One day, the son told Danny not to come around anymore, said he was holding them back from real independence. Danny didn't argue. He canceled everything: rent, utilities, car insurance, phone plan. Within 6 weeks, they were begging him to come back, promising things would be different. But Danny had already bought a condo in Sedona and started fresh. "Sometimes people need to feel the weight," Cameron said, his voice low but firm, "before they understand what you've been carrying." Brooklyn nodded, refilling my tea. "What do they even do without your money, Jarvis? Have you ever thought about that?" The question hit harder than expected. I'd never really considered it that way. Those payments had always felt like helping, not enabling. But sitting there with Cameron and Brooklyn looking at me like someone who deserved better, the truth became crystal clear. Derek, Mom, Dad. They'd built their entire comfortable life around my sacrifices and somehow made me feel guilty for it. I opened my laptop right there at their kitchen table. My fingers moved with purpose as I logged into my Bank of America account, the screen lighting up with rows of automatic payments. Electric bill, $400. Water, $120. Internet, $95. Home insurance, $350. Car payments, streaming services, maintenance fees. Nearly $2,500 a month drained from savings I'd built arranging wedding cakes and birthday cupcakes. Cameron gave a small nod, like he knew what was coming. Brooklyn stayed quiet, her expression calm but determined. My heart raced, but my hands were steady. Electric bill cancelled. Water cancelled. Internet terminated. Insurance gone. One by one, I severed every thread tying me to that house, each click feeling like shedding weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. For days after I cancelled everything, Phoenix's summer heat started working against my family in ways I'd never imagined. I was at Cameron and Brooklyn's, helping Brooklyn tend her herb garden when my phone rang. Derek's name flashed on the screen like a warning signal. I let it ring twice before answering. "Jarvis, what the hell did you do?" His voice cracked with panic and rage. "The internet's dead. I can't upload my music demos. Mom's freaking out because we got shut-off notices for everything. Power, water, even the damn cable. No greeting. No apology. Just demands like I was still his personal ATM machine." I adjusted my sun hat, staying calm. "You said you wanted to live without me," I replied, watching Brooklyn's tomatoes grow in the desert sun. "This is what that looks like." Derek didn't miss a beat. "Stop being so dramatic, Jarvis. Just turn everything back on and quit acting like a child." Classic Derek. Twisting every situation to make me the problem. I could hear Mom in the background, her voice thin and worried, probably panicking about the refrigerator in 115-degree heat. "It's not my responsibility to manage your life anymore," I told him. "You're 32 years old. Figure it out." There was a pause. Then he laughed bitterly. "You're so pathetic. This is exactly why nobody wants you around." Then he hung up. I set the phone down among the rosemary and basil, my hands steady though my chest burned. Brooklyn glanced over from watering her peppers, raising an eyebrow. "He's got some nerve." Cameron, trimming dead leaves from their orange tree, chuckled. "Give it a week. They'll figure out real quick what you were worth." Later that afternoon, Mom called. Her voice was soft, pleading, desperate. "Jarvis, honey, please come home. The house is falling apart without the AC. Derek can't work on his music. Your father can't get repair calls without Wi-Fi. We're family, sweetheart." I closed my eyes, picturing her in the living room with her romance novels, probably wringing her hands like she always did when anxious, the house growing hotter by the hour. "Mom," I said, gentle but firm, "Derek said you'd all be better off without me. You sat there and let him say it. So I'm giving you exactly what he wanted." Long silence. Then she whispered, "He didn't mean it. You know how he gets when he's frustrated. Please just come home." I thought about all those months tiptoeing through that house, absorbing Derek's insults, paying their bills, hoping desperately for even a crumb of appreciation. "I'm not coming back," I said. "Not until Derek takes responsibility for what he said and how he's treated me." Mom tried to interrupt, but I stopped her. "You let him say it, Mom. You and Dad just sat there. You're all responsible for this." Then I hung up. That evening, Derek called again, even angrier. "You think this is some kind of game? The neighbors are starting to notice. Martha's asking questions, acting all concerned but really just being nosy. You're embarrassing the whole family." I almost laughed. After everything, their reputation was what mattered now. "Handle your own bills, Derek," I said, and blocked his number. The desert heat was just getting started, and so was I. 3 weeks after the power died, the cracks in my family's world became canyons. I was settling deeper into my new routine, working at Home Depot, staying with Cameron and Brooklyn, building something that felt like peace, when Diane Martinez, our longtime neighbor, texted me out of nowhere. "Everything okay with your folks? Heard some concerning things around the neighborhood." I didn't reply, but I knew exactly what she meant. Scottsdale neighborhoods thrive on gossip, and the Coleman family was quickly becoming the main attraction. Mom's voicemails kept coming, each one more desperate than the last. I listened to the newest one while organizing seed packets at work. "Jarvis, we got a foreclosure notice from Wells Fargo. We're 3 months behind now. Please, honey, just call me back." I deleted it, but the words stuck. Without my monthly transfers keeping them afloat, Everything was collapsing faster than a house of cards in a dust devil. Derek's music career had always been more dream than reality, and now without internet for his online presence, he was completely stuck. Brooklyn found me staring at my phone during lunch break. "You're not wavering, are you?" she asked, unwrapping her turkey sandwich. I shook my head. They need to learn what my help was actually worth. But my voice wasn't as steady as I wanted it to be. The next week I drove past the old neighborhood. Not to visit, just to pick up mail I'd forwarded to the UPS store nearby. As I turned onto Desert Ridge Drive, I saw Martha and her husband Jim standing on their perfectly manicured lawn, whispering and pointing. They stopped mid-conversation when they spotted my Honda, Jim giving an awkward wave. I kept driving, but the image burned into my memory. My parents' house looking tired and defeated. The desert landscaping was dying without regular watering, the mailbox overflowing with what I knew were bills and more bills. The garage door was open, revealing Dad's cluttered workspace, probably his only escape from the tension inside. Through Brooklyn's friend network, I learned that Derek had taken a night job stocking shelves at Walmart on Indian School Road. My brother, who used to brag about his artistic vision and refused to work regular jobs, was now pushing carts through fluorescent-lit aisles at 2 a.m. Part of me felt a pang of something. Not quite sympathy, but the ghost of the protective big sister I used to be. But then I remembered his words at that dinner table, sharp and deliberate. He'd drawn this line, not me. Mom showed up at Cameron and Brooklyn's house unannounced one evening, looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered. She stood on their doorstep clutching her purse like armor, her usual confidence replaced by desperate worry. "Margaret, we need to talk," she said, using my middle name like when I was in trouble as a kid. I gestured to their living room. "Sit down, Mom." She perched on the edge of their couch, eyes darting around nervously. "The bank's threatening foreclosure. Derek's working nights, but it's not enough. Your father's trying to pick up handyman jobs, but without internet." Her voice trailed off, hands twisting her purse strap. "I'm sorry you're struggling," I said carefully, "but Derek made his choice that night. He needs to fix this himself." For months after I walked away, the house that held my entire childhood was gone. The for sale sign in front of 2847 Desert Ridge Drive told the story my family couldn't bring themselves to say out loud. They'd lost everything. Martha, who never met a piece of gossip she didn't love, texted me a photo of the foreclosure notice taped to the front door, the desert sun already fading the edges. I stared at that image for a long time but didn't respond. Through Brooklyn's network, I learned they'd moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Glendale, the kind of place where the AC barely works and the pool is always broken. The Johnsons, Martha, even quiet Mrs. Peterson from the corner house. They all had opinions about the Coleman family's downfall. Derek faced their stares every time he walked to his beat-up Corolla for his Walmart shifts. His dreams of music stardom buried under the weight of reality. But I wasn't watching their collapse anymore. I was building something new. With what remained of my savings, I bought a small condo in central Phoenix, near the light rail and close enough to walk to work. The walls were blank when I moved in, but slowly I filled them with photos from my bakery days. Pictures of wedding cakes I'd created, happy couples cutting through my buttercream masterpieces. I took a job as a consultant for Sweet Tooth Creations, a growing bakery chain, helping them design seasonal menus and training their decorators. It wasn't sweet dreams, but it felt like reclaiming pieces of myself. Every paycheck went into my own account, building my own future instead of propping up someone else's crumbling foundation. For the first time in years, I slept without the weight of their expectations crushing my chest. One morning, sipping coffee at my new kitchen counter while planning a quinceañera cake design, a letter arrived. The handwriting was unmistakable. Derek's careful script from when we used to pass notes during boring family dinners. I left it unopened on my counter for 3 days, knowing it would either be more anger or empty apologies. When I finally read it, his words surprised me. "Jarvis, I messed up. Really messed up. I was jealous, angry, and I took it out on you when you were the only one keeping us afloat. I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything, but I needed to try. I hope someday we can talk again. No mention of mom and dad. No promise to make things right with the whole family. Just a late, small acknowledgement that felt like too little, too late. I folded the letter and tucked it into my desk drawer next to old business cards from Sweet Dreams. I didn't write back. Derek had wanted a life without me, and I was finally giving it to him. Not out of spite, but because I deserved a life where I wasn't invisible, where my sacrifices were seen and valued. Cameron and Brooklyn became my chosen family, inviting me to barbecues and helping me paint my new place. But more importantly, I was learning to stand on my own, and it felt like coming home to myself. The old Jarvis would have rushed back at the first sign of their struggle. The new one knew better. 6 months later, sitting in my bright Phoenix condo with the morning sun streaming through windows I chose, I can see the lesson carved into every painful step of this journey. Family isn't just DNA and shared childhood memories. Real family is built on respect, mutual support, and the willingness to see each other's sacrifices instead of taking them for granted. I gave everything to keep their world spinning smoothly. My business, my dreams, my independence. And they not only took it for granted but grew to resent me for it. That realization was the key that unlocked my prison. Derek, Mom, and Dad learned the hard way that words carry weight, and choices have consequences. I hear through the neighborhood grapevine that they're rebuilding in their own way. Derek's still working at Walmart but picked up some weekend gigs playing guitar at local restaurants. Mom found work as a receptionist at a dentist's office. Dad's doing handyman work for a property management company. I wish them no harm, but I'm done carrying their load. They're learning what I knew all along. That independence isn't just about paying your own bills, it's about standing on your own feet with dignity intact. My life has become something I actually recognize as mine. Last month, I helped design the wedding cake for Cameron's niece. A 3-tier masterpiece with sugar flowers that took me back to the best parts of owning Sweet Dreams. The bride cried when she saw it, and that feeling, that moment of creating joy through my work, reminded me why I fell in love with baking in the first place. I'm saving money again, this time for myself. Maybe another bakery someday, or maybe something completely different. The point is, it's my choice now. My checking account, my decisions, my future. Derek's letter sits in my desk drawer, unread for weeks now. I've thought about responding, about building some kind of bridge back to the family I used to know. But every time I consider it, I remember that night at the dinner table. Not just his words, but the silence that followed. How quickly they all accepted the idea that I was the problem instead of the solution. Self-reliance, I've learned, isn't just about paying your own way. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to accept less than you deserve, even from people who share your last name. Without that foundation, love becomes just a word, empty as a promise and brittle as Phoenix desert clay. To everyone who's followed this story from that first painful dinner to this moment of clarity, thank you. Your time, your attention, your own stories shared in comments and messages mean more than I can express. I've told this story because I know some of you have felt invisible, unappreciated by people you'd give everything for. You've carried their weight until your back broke, only to be pushed aside when convenient. See you. Understand. And I want you to know that walking away from toxicity, even when it wears the mask of family, isn't giving up on love. It's finally choosing to love yourself enough to demand better. Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting people face the consequences of their choices while you build something beautiful from the pieces of yourself they left behind.